Brittany has this crazy ability to see things somewhat before they happen, but just know this is the direction. And, for someone like myself who's been in a lot of leadership roles, I'm able to get the crew of the ship to a direction, but she knows she can see the journey before she sets the course. And that's an ability that I've never had, but I can get you there through the chaos, but she knows what the end result is going to look like before she even starts. And to me, that's a very rare quality in a leader. It's a very rare quality in a human being to see what can be, and then to be able to have the humanity to work with other people. She is just that impactful. It's crazy.
So welcome back to the Liquid Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Monte Burrow. Today we have a new one. Not only are we surrounded by some founders, but we're surrounded by a future founder as well. I am extremely honored to have me today, Brittany and James Penny of 2 Cents. And these are the founders of a beautiful bourbon called The Nine, which we'll talk about a little bit as we progress the conversation. But I just want to say good morning or good afternoon or whatever time it is. What time is? Goodness gracious, I can't keep up what's going on in the world. How you guys doing?
It's been busy, but that's how things are here. In the whole bourbon world, it's always something going on. Kentucky is known for bourbon, so it's always something to do, and new tasting, things like that. So we've just been out there just doing things.
Keeping busy. No, I like it. I like to hear that. So what I would love to do for the folks who are listening and for the folks that are watching this, I'd love to learn a little bit of your backstory. What got you to the point where you're at now? And, I would love to learn a little bit about you pre the Nine, right? Who is Brittany and James? Who were you pre the Nine? Like what were you doing?
Well, I'll go ahead and start. Pre the nine, I was working for a non-profit. I was doing their marketing. So, but I always drank a bourbon, and I was just somebody that just was working 9 to 5, but not really fulfilled. I was felt like I was just being taken for granted and things like that. And I'm just like, there has to be some way that I could just love what I do. And then James, I'll have him take it because he's eating right now. Typical.
All right. Breakfast is a hard thing to get with 2 kids. I'm gonna piggyback on Brittany's a little bit. Even though she was working a 9 to 5, she always poured herself deeply into what she did. Her last couple jobs were both in the nonprofit world, and she joined the nonprofits because she cares about the community. She wants to see people do better. And unfortunately, we live in a country where people should be taken care of, but the government stops at certain places. And so nonprofits exist to pick up that governmental need. And so she's worked with a variety of people, women that have been battered, abused, veterans, houseless, just the list goes on. But in the unfulfillment for her and her roles, it's about not being seen. Nonprofits typically pay people less than corporate worlds do, which is understandable because they run on shoestring budgets and rely on donations heavily. But she just wasn't being seen and valued for her talents and gifts. But typically, by the time you get to a nonprofit, there's a quote unquote system in place for how you get donations, how you speak to people and whatnot. And it's very calculated. For them, every conversation eventually leads to asking for a check. And so when you have new ideas and new thoughts that are out of the box, you get squashed because people don't know that your ideas are going to bring in dollars. So she has spent a lot of time in her career literally being a worker bee, but not being seen. And so for me as a husband, that's always been and a home life standpoint, very depressing, because you live with somebody that you know is awesome. You see the value that they bring to the world, the universe, and then they get paid to do something, and you're thinking that, oh, okay, well, these people are gonna see. But this is where you get into the conversation, a boss versus a leader. And she's had a lot of bosses and very few leaders that she's actually, almost none that she's actually worked for. Um, my experience is a little different. I was in the corporate world for a long time. I worked for UPS, plant engineering for 18 years. And so I was at Worldport, which is the world's largest automation hub here in Louisville, Kentucky. And so automation meaning in a facility that's 22 football fields in size, getting your package from entry to exit in less than 15 minutes, 144 jumbo jets that come in, every sort, that deliver packages to the tune of 1 to 2 million per sort, which might be a max of 4 million per day. And that's literally UPS's main hub in the continental United States to be able to ship packages. So what people don't understand about that is that if you live in, say, Los Angeles, California, and you're going to ship something to, say, Sacramento, your stuff typically, if it's next day air, is going to get on a bird, fly all the way to Louisville, get sorted, and then fly all the way back out to be able to be deposited. So for me, I had the corporate experience, spent a lot of time in management. My life was always about fixing things. I literally had a repair crew, 20 something people, and we had 8 hours in between two sorts to fix the major conveyor problems in this facility. And I felt like Scotty on Star Trek all the time, because I was like, I couldn't do it. It just didn't have the power, and you're running around trying to get everything done. And somehow we made miracles happen every single day. So for me, it was about, you've got X amount of time to fix something, make something happen, do what you've got to do, get it done. Very fast paced. And it was a lot of relying on people that had that knowledge, because not that I've never turned a wrench, but to the extent of understanding the mechanical aspects of the way that my employees did, I just didn't have that knowledge. So I had to rely on other people, learn how to build relationships, and not just learn how to be a boss, but learn how to lead people and get them to buy into, we've got 8 of the toughest jobs on the facility, and they all have to be done tonight in 8 hours. And I need you guys to break into teams and let's figure out how we're going to get this done, that kind of stuff. So making the impossible happen on a day-to-day basis. So in my role, I was always seen, not always appreciated, but always seen for being able to get things done. And so in a household, it was crazy, as we come home and we'd have our conversations, and I'm having this day where I'm getting accolades and kudos because I had a lot of awesome things happen, and it wasn't me, it was my team that was making things happen. I'm just leading them in the direction. Whereas Brittany is the team member, and she's trying to give the awesome ideas. And she didn't have work for someone that was of my mentality to say, sometimes your best ideas come from within. And her ideas were squashed. And so she was giving, and nobody was wanting to take. And so it's been a very pre 2 Cents Inc. very, very interesting journey for us, because like I said, it's polar opposites, seen and unseen.
How did you, so that's thanks for sharing that and for that transparency. What made you think, or did you think about, hey, there's a void in my career, there's an opportunity to potentially fill that void, and filling that void from an ownership standpoint versus going into potentially, for you, Brittany, going into another nonprofit, or for you, James, going into another, UPS, you can't get any bigger than that, to be quite honest with you, you know what I mean? But going into another corporate job, like what was the desire at that point to look at, hey, what can we do collectively to do something on our own, or what spawned that conversation?
So I will go ahead and actually take that one. 2020 happened. 2020, we were locked in. We were locked down. I was pregnant with my first, so not this one, but and we were just in the house constantly, and and I was just like, what can we do? There's something we can do here
Yeah.
where I can get seen and it's a fun thing and all this stuff. And then James just kept on drinking around me. So, pregnancy knows was just picking up all these different notes and flavors and all this different stuff. And I'm just like, I want to start my own bourbon company. And James was just like, say, huh? And I was just like, yeah, I think that'll be a good thing. Plus, I was also thinking that in this whole bourbon game, there's not a lot of people that look like me.
Mm.
And I was just like, and I have two girls now, and I was just like, I want them to see somebody that looks like them too.
Yeah.
So I've decided to be that person, and we just started to take off, and it was just kind of like, it really just was a thing to where I just woke up and I was like, I want to do this. There really was really no thought behind it, anything like that, no planning. I woke up and I just wanted to do it. And then we sat on it, and then the baby came, and we weren't sleeping typically. So at nighttime, we were designing this whole company and working out that whole thing. So it was a lot of sleepless time, but it was good sleepless time.
And what's even funnier about that is that Brittany's instinct to start this business, when she came up with it, I knew it was the right thing to do because earlier on in our marriage, we were living in an apartment, and like at the time I was working a second shift. It was very weird hours. And so at certain points, we almost weren't sleeping in the bed at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then on weekends, we would. And so she just rose up out the bed one weekend and said, you know what? We need to get a house. And I was like, what? I said, where are we going to get this money? And
No. Get it right. I said, I don't want to live here anymore.
That's
we
correct.
need a house.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
And so she just looked at me and was just kind of like, well, figure it out. And I was like, oh, okay. Because she's like, that's what you do at work, right? You figure things out. So figure this out. And I was like, okay. And so I kid you not, from that conversation until the day we moved in it was exactly 30 days. And it was like she has these visions, and as long as you go with the plan and you're very intentional, things happen quickly, and it will blow your mind. I went to work and I spoke to my coworker and I said, hey man, my wife said we need to get a house and yada yada. And my coworker said, well, you're investing in your 401k, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, you can borrow against that to get a down payment for a home. And I was like, all right, let me look and see how much I got in there, because I had buying company stock and all that kind of stuff, and happened to look, because at UPS they tell you when they start giving you stock, just get it and forget about it, and then one day when you need it, you'll be very surprised. And I was like, man, that's a bunch of BS and yada yada. And so at the time, I'd been there 11 years, and lo and behold, when I flipped it open, it was like, oh, okay, now we can do something. And so we worked with a realtor. We told the realtor we needed to move quickly, because we only had a short amount of time left in our lease at the apartment. And she found a few things, didn't fit the mantra. And then on a Sunday, we just drove around town. And Brittany's like, we're going to find this house today. We're going to find it. And we kept looking and kept looking. And she's like, oh, what about this one? And it had a for sale sign on it. We told our realtor, made the call. Realtor said, hey, it's a short sale. It's getting ready to go into foreclosure on Wednesday. This is Sunday. And she said, so if you're going to look at it, let's go look at it Tuesday. You make a decision. We put in an offer that night and see what happens. We were like, all right, well, cool. You know what I'm saying? We've been at this for like a week and a half and nothing's happened. So let's see what happens. And sure enough, we went in it. We loved it. The house just really spoke to us. It's the house we're still in to this day. And we made our offer and got a stupid deal, which really fell in line with everything. And it just happened. And so with the business, it was that same thing. Brittany said, hey, I want to start a bourbon brand. Called around to my network and said, hey man, how do we do this? What type of contacts do people have? And some folks got us in contact with the local distillery, who was willing to work with folks such as ourselves and create unique brands and whatnot. And we entered the market, formed the business a couple weeks later. We entered the market 6 months after that. So very, very quick, and bourbon is a product that has to age. So for us to move that quickly, we obviously sourced our bourbon and whatnot. But Well, Brittany has these visions, and this, as long as you follow her with intentionality, magical things happen quickly, and it blows everybody else away. But I call it, be spiritual. You living in line with God. You know what I'm saying, and understanding your purpose, what you're supposed to do, because we spend a lot of time not doing what He tells us to do, and then that moment when we listen, that's when all the blessings and miracles just start pouring out the sky. And that's literally what happened in two different cases. So waiting on her to do that again. You come out the woodwork.
And it's so much to unpack with that story, and it's an amazing story. I mean, so if I go back for a second, put it in context. All of this happened during COVID, right? That's when this. So that in itself is, for lack of a better word, insane, in a great way, insane, right? It's to kudos to you to jump into that. I mean, it's funny how people get placed into your lives, right? So we met a few months back, I think, at Fawn Weaver's Spirits on the Rise event.
Yes, sir.
And it's ironic because I think I sat next to Brittany, and since then we've interacted a few other times at some other events and some other places. But it's funny even hearing your stories, seeing some parallels in my life, right? So I mean, not in any stretch of the imagination, but for instance, James, my very first offer, I ended up taking the job, but my very first offer out of undergrad was with UPS.
Wow.
And my undergrad is in engineering. I have a master's in marketing, so I've kind of done both. But my first offer was at UPS, doing some engineering work in Maryland, right? So it's just funny. And then Brittany reminds me a lot of my wife, because literally during COVID, so we started getting into real estate investing and buying whole properties. And we had just got this house, and we're trying to figure out what to do with it. And I kid you not, it must have been the day before Black Friday, like 4 or 5 in the morning. Wife wakes up, let's Airbnb it. No knowledge. I mean, we knew about Airbnbs, but never, we hadn't done, like, typically I research everything to death. You know what I mean? I was like, all right, let's do it. And we ended up going shopping that day to furnish. I mean, like, literally like that. And I mean, it was a great decision. You know what I mean? Like, and following that intuition, whatever you want to call it, I truly believe a lot of that is sparked, as you said, through women. You know what I mean? So kudos to you guys. And James, you are blessed with having a good one. You are blessed with having a good one. So keep following that trail.
And Monty, what you just said a mouthful, in the whole thing about women as far as being in leadership. That's one thing that working in engineering at UPS is a really male dominated field. And that's where you have a lot of bosses, and there's just not that visionary leadership all the time to where people can step outside of themselves, their ego, the training, and make a decision that is just completely off kilter. So when we started the business, what's funny is years before, back when we were having all these, issues, good things and bad things happen in, corporate versus nonprofit world, I would tell Brittany, I said, the only way you're really going to be successful and be seen is if you start your own business and do something. She's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want all that responsibility. It's a lot of work and yada, yada. And I'm like, but you're doing that work now. Why not just do it for you? Yeah. She never really wanted to jump into it. Meanwhile, she was telling me, well, you should leave UPS and go off on your own because you seem to be the one doing all this stuff and yada, yada. And I'm like, I don't know. When that paycheck coming in every week sounds really nice, and so we were both encouraging each other to do something that we were both kind of scared to do. And so in 2018, I left UPS and went off on my own, and just about doubled my salary when I walked away, doing virtually the same thing with just a little bit more responsibility. So thank you, babe, for pressing me to do that. And so when it came time to form the business, she was like, well, yeah, you go ahead and be the president. And I said, no. No, this is what we've talked about for years. This is your time to shine. You go ahead and do it. And because she had already had the idea about the bourbon, and she already had the idea and the vision about the house, I said, this business needs to run on a visionary leader, someone that can see it before it happens. That's not me. I can get us there. I can plan it and budget it and yada, yada, but you need to have you're in the position to have the visions. And if we're in the opposite roles, it's not going to work. So you need to be the one that is seen, and I'll be the one that is in the background helping you to make things happen. And so she didn't necessarily agree with that. We put her name at the top of the ticket. And now, 2 years later, she's really settled into her role as president and CEO. She's getting more comfortable in doing things and making decisions, and in being seen. And, it's just funny because, she says now, oh, somebody called me and they want to do this and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, that's great. That's awesome. But 10 years ago, nobody would have touched her, and so especially in Louisville is very much a who type of town. And if you're, and I'm just going to say this, if you're black and you're not one of the in blacks, they're not going to mess with you. So,
the safe black.
Safe black. Thank you. Yes, you have to be safe. You have to be on message and not go against the grain and talk about real things and real issues. And Brittany or I are never been those type of people. We always press the hard conversation because people out here are suffering. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're blessed to have things happen quickly for us and yada yada, but we understand that not everybody's in that same space. And so how do we help get people there? What does that look like? Let's have the conversations to make these things happen so everybody can have these opportunities and these visionary moments, and then have the good fortune and the resources to make things happen quickly. That's not something that happens every day. And unless we're intentional about it in our society, it's not going to happen for everybody.
So, Brittany, we're in COVID time again. You're pregnant, right? You're pregnant. James you're at UPS, James, or you're not? This is right when the idea spawned.
I'm not a UPS at this time.
No. So you don't have the UPS check coming in, even you double your salary, but you're doing your own thing. And you said, let's start a bourbon. Had you ever started a company before that? And had you ever started an alcohol company before that?
I have not. Now, James, we used to do the like photography, like a wedding photography. So we did that for about 10 years, but that was always James's company. I was just there kind of just helping, like taking pictures, not knowing like, oh, well, this is pretty, click. Oh, this is nice, click. I wasn't technical or anything like that. I was just like going around. So I've never done like a business, anything like that. Never did anything with bourbon except drink it. No, I never did anything like this. So it just came to me one day, like I just want to do my own bourbon brand, because Kentucky, there's so many brands out here, so many, and there's not a lot of Black people, especially not a lot of Black, women. So it was just kind of like, why not? Why isn't there? And I'm like, well, maybe I could, jump into this, do this, fill that void or something like that. I didn't know that I would be the first in, Kentucky. Like, I didn't know that, going into it. In fact, I Googled it for about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, because I wasn't sure. I was like, no, there has to be somebody that rose up the rank that got there. And I'm like, no. So it was just me. And we just kind of started and just kind of took it from there.
So talk.
Go ahead,
Bobby. I just gonna say I want to finish that point real quick. So you said you just started from there. What was that process like? What? So all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm in. We're in. I'm gonna do this. What is that process? So it's one thing to say I'm in. Now it's time to press that start button. It's like, all right, where do I begin? You're starting a bourbon. You've had bourbon, you've drank bourbon, you love bourbon, but how did you start? Like what was that process? Talk to me a little bit about the process of even getting started. How did you know where to get the liquid, where to get the bottles? How do you come up with the what was that process?
Well, that was a lot of James too, because we fleeced out his network, and he had a distillery kind of craft on in his back pocket, because he's just clever like that. So we just partnered with them. So they actually got the juice and everything for us and things like that, kind of walked us through. They told us things, but they didn't tell us everything.
Right.
So a lot of things was just trial and error, just trying to go in, get something and not work, and then try something else. So that's we were kind of learning on our job, basically. So we just kind of took it from there. James, anything
But
you want to add?
yeah, you're being very modest, sweetie. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in the midst of that. Even though we had a distillery that was partnering with us, they would say, "Hey, this is going to cost this, and you got to go in and you got to check." And so the first thing we had to do is, I'm a project manager by trade, so
Mm.
in our world, we operate on a triangle of scope, schedule, and budget. That's how every project lives and dies. So the first thing we had to do was establish a budget, say, okay, how much are we willing to personally invest in this, get it going. We were lucky to get work with a bank. Republic Bank has this awesome community fund, which was established shortly after Breonna Taylor incident, to where we as African Americans could get business loans at very low interest rates. So our first business loan was at 3%, which
Nice.
is huge.
Yeah.
We're very thankful to Republic Bank for that, and still have a good relationship with them to this day. Because the question I would ask banks is, when you loan money to other banks, you're doing it at 1 to 1.5%. What do you? Well, typically business loans are somewhere between 5 to 9% if you have decent credit and good collateral. What are you all doing to bridge that gap? And Republic Bank is one of the few that actually answered that question. So to every other bank out there that hasn't done that, shame on you. But this is how you create the American dreams. Anyway, we did that budget wise. The next thing was schedule. How soon do we want to be on the shelf? How long is it going to take to get all this stuff done? Yada, yada, yada. We got feedback from the distillery, and we were starting in January of September, and we knew there was going to be a presidential inauguration in January, and we were, hoping that Kamala and Joe were going to pull out a victory. And we said, hey, what if we release a brand on inauguration day? That was the initial plan. Things didn't go as planned, and so we backed it up to release on April 9th. And another one of Brittany's genius ideas, our bourbon is called the 9 Bourbon. We're both Star Wars fans, so they do May the 4th be with you. They talk about May 4th and whatnot. So she said, let's do 4 the 9. Let's release on 4/9. And I'm like, all right, that's where we're gonna put our schedule at, and yada yada yada. So we knew we had to do everything to back into that date, make sure we had bottles on site, corks, and yada yada. And even though we had a distillery that worked with us, it was still, do you have this? Is this ready? Are these put together? What challenges are you having? And doing that, constant maintenance of conversation pieces of, are you making sure that our product is being created effectively to our high quality standards and whatnot.
Were you surprised about the complexity of the alcohol business when you jumped in?
I was. I'll go ahead and say that. Yes, I was very surprised. I just kind of thought that, you just have juice, you bottle it, you cork it, you sell it. That's it. I didn't know all the, regulations and 3-tier systems and things like that. And it has to go to this person, it has to go to this person. I didn't know any of that. I just kind of walked into kind of naive, really. And I just kind of just walked in and was like, okay, I got the juice, I got the bottle, I got the cork, label on it, marketing done, sell it. And no, it was definitely not that simple at all.
Yeah, I had a friend who his father owned a liquor store for several years here in the city, and we would have conversations about distributors and tiering and pricing. And so this is way before I was in the industry, and so you hear those things, and you just kind of listen, and just put it in a box so you save it for later. My project management is in material handling, meaning we create large scale conveyor systems for FedEx, UPS, Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, understanding regulation, especially like to the tune of employee safety and operator safety, that's where I live and die. You create a conveyor, you've got to have something guarded to make sure somebody can't stick their fingers in and get it pinched, and then you've got to have a handrail to make sure somebody doesn't fall off if they're 20 feet off the air. So all these different things from an engineering standpoint go into the regulation. So I'm comfortable in that space, but then flipping that over to liquid and not being able to like physically build your regulation when you're doing the branding and all that kind of stuff, and just having to say, okay, you can't do this with, because TTB says you can't put this on your label and you can't say that and yada yada. That was a little bit unnerving for me, because I'm a builder by trade, and so doing all this stuff from a virtual standpoint, or just, you know, like pie in the sky, was different. And Brittany's, you know, the marketing genius, and so I'm, you know, coming back and I'm saying, all right, we got all this, here's the budget, here's the schedule, and I'm like, so are we sure people are going to buy this? And she's like, don't worry, I got a plan. You know, so all of that in process was just the chaos, you know, tasting the juice and figuring out which barrels we wanted, which was all her brainchild. And because women's olfactory, that's one thing I learned very early, and jumping into this, is that women's olfactory sensors are infinitely better than men's. So having her be the one to really make the final selections on the juice, to me, seemed like the win, because even though alcohol is a male dominated industry, we can't compare, you know, when it comes to taste and smell and whatnot. So I always laugh. I go to these bourbon groups and they're all men and yada yada, and they're telling me what they think about the bourbon, and I'm just like, you know, women are superior in that sense, to where they can really tell what's good and what's not, you know, and that's why women are mainly wine drinkers, you know, because wine has a lot of complexity between the grapes, the climate, all that kind of stuff. So having her be the one to do that was, for us, it was just a smart play.
James, stick with you for a quick second. So there are a lot of people who are contemplating potentially leaving their 9-to-5s to follow their dreams, or to dig deeper and go deep into their side hustles and things of that nature. When you think about the skills that you learned during your career in industry, is there anything that you were able to tap into your current world that you're like, wow, I didn't even think about the fact that, well, even if you thought about it, but is there things that they can tap into, or skills that they're currently learning or able to assess during their quote unquote 9-to-5s that they can potentially take into the entrepreneur space? Like how would you have them what would you suggest to them to think about if they're thinking about taking that leap and taking away some of those skills?
Good question. I would say that the number one thing is, how well are you on financials? If you have trouble balancing your own budget, don't jump into a business, because that will, financials will kill you day one.
Or get help.
Yes, or get help. Get you a certified accountant who will work with you and teach you the ins and the outs and whatnot. The other thing is your people skills. You know, if you're that person at work that nobody likes you, when you start a business, if you have to talk to people to sell your product or whatever, either you need to get a front man or front woman, or you need to rethink being an entrepreneur. How well you negotiate is absolutely key. And negotiating in your 9-to-5 is called managing up. When you have a boss or you work for someone that is good and terrible, and you have to constantly tell them that, nah, I think we should do it like that. That's negotiating. Negotiating is it's a learned skill. It's not something that people are born with. But we all have had that experience of a bad boss or a bad leader, and they want to take the company decision where in a direction where it's going to tank. Don't let them do that. And when it's just you're negotiating with yourself, but also with your vendors, to make sure that you're getting the best prices, the best options, the best timetables. And in the project management world, there's this term called best price, best schedule, meaning how quick can they get it to you, and how good is that price and that cost. I think the other key skill that I would tell anybody to make sure that they walk away from a 9-to-5 with is drive. And drive and creativity are not necessarily skills, but in a sense they are. How often do you self-start a project? Meaning you're at your 9-to-5 and you see a void and you say, I think we should create this. I think we should start selling this, or I think we should engage and create this process to make everybody's work life better. And then you do it, you submit it to the leadership, get them to sign off on it, roll it out, train people on it. If you are not a self-starter, entrepreneurship is not necessarily for you, at least at the top level. Now, if you're working for someone who's got that self-starting ability, that's a different story. But for you to start your own, you have to be able to have an idea and take it out of your brain or out of your heart and put it into the real world so that people can see it, touch it, live it, breathe it. And that's not an easy process. That is it's time consuming, it's painful, especially when somebody doesn't like your idea or doesn't want to invest in you or whatever, and be able to take those licks and then just keep on moving.
So Brittany, I'm really curious to know, taking this leap in some way, shape, or form was an opportunity for you to be seen more, right? But then the flip side of it is, again, we know the nuances of this business, especially with bourbon, and then compound that with being in Kentucky and that click, if you will, right? How has that journey been to be seen, not as only a representative of a brand, but the CEO, the head honcho of the brand? How has that journey been for you?
It's been interesting. Let's just put it that way. It's funny because people cannot fathom that I am the CEO. So every time James and I are out somewhere, they talk to James first, and I just sit back. I play it real cool. I just sit back and I just kind of let them talk or whatever. And James is just great because he is just like, well, the boss is over there, so you may want to go and talk to her and finish up this conversation, But it's just been that. It's just a mind shift that the bourbon people have to get used to, is that women drink bourbon too. Black women can do this, and we are doing it. So this is it. And it's funny because when they do come over, then I get quizzed up, like, so what is this mash bill? And what is this? And what is that? And I tell them off top, I don't distill. I don't do that. I don't know the chemistry stuff behind it. I don't do that. I just run the business. So if you have any business questions, yes, I can do those. But it's like they always try to like get you, and it's just very strange. But
what's interesting is people pull me to the side and say, you trust your wife to run your business? And I'm like, you don't? I'm like, well, you married the wrong woman. What I mean? Wow. I don't know what to tell you. And so what Brittany's talking about as far as the quizzing, we had to go and get her certified as a bourbon steward to make sure that she had a qualification in the industry, so that the quizzing would slowly begin to stop. But even still, even being a bourbon steward, people still ask a lot of, I call them entry level questions. But it's fine. It's all good.
What's that saying? I don't write raps, I write checks.
Bingo.
there it
Bingo.
is. There it is. I love it. I love it. And you have the right mindset, Brittany. You do what you do and you do what you do well. And I'm telling you, for me personally, I'm this just even hearing you express that with your daughter in your lap, that's powerful. That is so powerful. Yeah. Like, to me, that's my chills moment. I love it. So work-life balance is somewhat of a myth, especially when you're an entrepreneur. So let me clarify what I mean by that. There needs to be balance in your life, but when you're an entrepreneur, especially, there's a lot of things that blend in. Amplify that now when you're a husband and wife team. How have you all, or what do you do to ensure that the trials and tribulations and all of the things that go along with running a business don't negatively impact your personal life?
Ooh, I will take that one. So when we were doing photography, one of the reasons that we stopped is because we got married, and we wanted our Saturdays back, for one, but then number two, we didn't want to constantly be yelling at each other on Saturdays, because I would, we'd have walkie-talkies and microphone earbuds in and whatnot. And, in wedding photography, you've got 2 seconds to catch a moment, 1 second to notice it, 1 second to shoot it. And if you don't catch it, it's gone forever. Recreating it is almost impossible. And so I'd be, Brittany, get the shot. Did you get this? I got it. Shut up. So we wanted to stop doing that. And so we shut that down a long time ago. And so now when we
constantly
decided,
yelling in my ear,
hey, look,
to where I had to take my earpiece out and just kind of like set it down, because I'm like, dude, chill, I got this.
When brides and mamas don't get the pictures they want, they get mad. And so and again, that's negotiating, that conversation after the wedding, you know, why did you get this picture? That kind of stuff. So yeah, just trying to make sure we CYA, cover your ass. But anyhow, so when we formed this business, we already knew what it looked like on a bad day. So we said, this is what we're going to do differently. And we had to because photography was really my bread and butter. And even though we should definitely mention, Brittany modeled for quite a long time in her earlier years. So she had experience in front of the camera, and then I brought her behind the camera to help increase her modeling ability, to get better familiarity with photographers. And then as she grew in that, I said, why don't you just come work with me, you know, because this is good. This is pre us getting married. So that I want to, you know, that was part of the game and the hustle. I'm
about to say, sound like you were buttering her up a little bit over there, James.
The game doesn't change, brother. You know? Anyhow, so we ended up deciding with this business that we were going to walk in knowing where one of us started and the other stopped. And so we wrote down strengths and weaknesses, things that we were each individually good at. And we said, when we encounter a roadblock that deals with our weaknesses, we're not going to ding the other for that weakness. The first thing we're going to do is figure out who we can pick up the phone and call and pay to help us get through that hurdle, so we're not browbeating one or the other over the head. And while that has been expensive in certain places, it has saved that dinner table conversation of not, you didn't do this, you did that. We're a team. And when you know your partner's strengths and weaknesses, it's almost like being a superhero. You know what I'm saying? Iron Man can shoot repulsor beams out of his hand. Captain America has no long-range projectile except the shield. But when he throws the shield, he is weak because his projectile is out there. So knowing when your partner starts and stops to be able to slay that enemy, which is today's business problem, that for us has been infinitely helpful in our professional life. And it has saved us a lot of angry nights in the bedroom as a married couple.
I need to bring out my notepad and replay this piece and make sure I take some notes. So yes, that advice was gem worthy, amazing. And to have the foresight to think through that, I think it will serve you both extremely well. What does success ultimately look like for you both? And this is for the brand particularly, you know, but what does success look like?
I'll let the boss take that one.
Okay. For me, yes, money is wonderful, but that's not it. For me, it is to see the next generation do this, to follow, to have somebody say, because I always say that I'm the next Fawn Weaver, right? So I want that young girl to come up and say, I'm the next Brittany Penny. That's when I know that I've like made it, because I'm just like, yes.
And I'll say this, and so I love that, but I'll say not about being the next Fawn. I want people to know that you're the first Brittany Penny. That's, to me, is leaning into your greatness. Now, I know you didn't ask me, but this is it's like this is family talking, right? You are the first Brittany Penny, and I mean, I know you all are well on your way. When you think about the journey up until this point, and when we know this story is not finished, nearly even close to being finished, Brittany, what do you think are some of, well, I won't pin you down into some of them, but what do you think has been the biggest learning you've taken away thus far in the journey, as far as when you think about getting to what that success looks like? What has been the thing that's been the biggest learning for you?
I'll talk a little bit about that. I think the biggest learning thing is just the transformation of relationships, the people around you in your circle. One day you're drinking with your circle, and the next day you're asking your circle to drink your drink. And that mental exchange of, oh, I should buy your product. I should support you. Oh, really? But what's interesting is you have those friends that will drive 400 miles for XYZ product. But when you tell them, well, we're not sold in all these different stores, there's only a few places you can buy our bourbon right now, but you might have to drive 10 minutes to get our bourbon. And it's like, I don't know about that. Oh, and I call it the dentist syndrome. When you ask somebody a question and your dentist say, okay, open wide. Here you you see your friends, it's like their brain just falls out of their head. Like what, and how like people don't see the success story right there next to them, and like there have been plenty of people, after Dr. King who have talked about they were in the circle, but they didn't see it, you know what I'm saying? And they didn't realize what they were doing at the time and who they were next to and all that. And being around Brittany and understanding what she's capable of and trying to get people to transform and say, okay, look, we saw you spend $300 on a purse for a person that you don't know, you'll never meet, you'll never interact with, that has never cooked you a meal, poured you a drink, but we're asking you to spend $70 on a bottle of our bourbon, and you see their nose turn up. So that transformation of watching people that are in your circle have that confusion, that's been one of the hardest thing. And so I think we heard this at the Nearest and Jack conference we were at together, is that, having relationships that are transformational as opposed to transactional. And so we have really literally started reevaluating a lot of our relationships and even family, to the point of where, is this a transformative relationship or is this transactional? And the ones that have been highly transactional, we didn't purposely say we're going to walk away from, but in 2023, we changed our mantra to say, personally and professionally, we're only building with people who are builders. And as we put that mantra and that energy out there, the transactional folks have started to fall away. So that's been one of I think the hardest things that in that road to success of finding the builders, identifying the transformative relationships, and then even when you meet a transformative person such as yourself, it's like, how do I help Monty get to that next level? What can I do for him, as opposed to what does somebody need to do for me? And that kind of thing. It's hard learning, man. It's real rough, but it's been good learning.
Yeah, you said a mouthful there, and I totally agree 100%. Especially when you think about your tribe, you know what I mean? And that tribe, whether it's friends or family, it's about protecting your energy. And it's surprising to me sometimes when you really dig into those relationships, especially the ones that you think would be a little bit more proactively supportive, sometimes you see them yielding back, and it's almost like you wish and you want to see more from them, but sometimes you gotta meet them where they are and understand they are who they are. And it's okay for you to still love them, but sometimes that love needs to be from a distance. And it's a hard pill to swallow for some folks, but the reality is, if you're on a journey and this journey is something you're building upon, you have to do it or you'll be consumed by it, So now, again, I've been saying this several times, but I applaud you all for seeing that and then living in your excellence to get there. So we're at the tail end, but before I let you go, there's it's a little game that I always love to play, and it's called Here's One of My Favorites, right? And this is an opportunity to just to see who you think of or what comes to mind in certain spaces and places, right? So this isn't necessarily about the bourbon or even about entrepreneurship per se. It's just to learn a little bit more about you. So here's the caveat, right? Here's one of my favorites. So it doesn't mean it's your absolute favorite. It could be just, here's one of my favorites, right? So we'll start here. Here is one of my favorite brands. And this doesn't have to be an alcohol brand, any type of brand. Here's one of my favorite brands.
One of my favorite brands. The first one that came to mind is Fenty. Rihanna is doing it. I mean, the marketing is always on point. The products are always on point. She is killing the game with Fenty. So that I will have to go with that one.
Okay. What about you, James?
I'm gonna say Star Wars as a brand. It's gone through a lot of transformation in the last 15 years, changes in leadership and whatnot. Heavy focus now on streaming shows and platforms as opposed to movies, which is what we were all grew up on. And just seeing that evolution of such a huge intellectual property has been it's been interesting. And there's some parts about it I love and parts about it I absolutely hate, but I understand that they are a multi-billion-dollar brand that continues to evolve and reach new audiences and new customers. And there's a lot of learning there.
Now I'll stay with you then, James. Here's one of my favorite songs.
I would have to say All Along the Watchtower. Originally done by Bob Dylan, redone by Jimi Hendrix, redone several times by other people. I'm a big fan of Barry McCreary's version, which he did for Battlestar Galactica, has an electric sitar in it. I absolutely love the sitar, and if I get the time, I'm going to learn guitar and then flip it over and learn the sitar, because to me, I love instruments that are not just from America. Because most instruments didn't come from America. So let's start there. And just a beautiful song. And even after 40 years after Bob Dylan wrote it, we're still trying to figure out the meaning of some of the things that the lyrics he put into the song. So it's a timeless classic, and it's gotten me through a lot of tough times.
What about you, Brittany? Here's one of my favorite songs.
I don't have one because I'm a huge Janet Jackson fan.
Okay.
So, but my favorite Janet Jackson song would have to be Rhythm.
Okay.
Nation, because it's so crazy that she wrote that back in like the 80s, and it's still happening now, and it's still powerful now. So just the messaging and everything, plus it is a bop. So I mean, there's that.
Have you ever seen her perform?
Janet Jackson, but definitely Rhythm Nation.
Have you seen her perform live?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She has.
Amazing.
Hold on, do what?
No, I was saying, have you ever seen Janet perform live?
Yes, and let me tell you about it. So when I go see Janet, I see Janet. So I'm like third, fourth row. Like I see her, right? And so there was one time to where she like did this hair flip thing and she sweated on me, and I almost like passed out. Like it was the best experience ever, because I just love her. So
I see a collaboration in the future of a 3 cents, the 2 pennies, and then the penny from Good Time.
Yes. See. Yeah.
All right. Well, look, we might have to edit that out so nobody steal it. This is one of my favorite things to do, just to find some peace and like just to relax. Either one you can pick off.
One of my favorite things to do just to relax, so it's just kind of odd, but I just sit in like silence, because my house, with 2 kids and everything like that, TV's on, everything's going, it gets very just loud, and I'm a very quiet person. I like just silence. So I shut off everything. Kids are, sleeping. James is downstairs doing the whole video game playing, and I just sit there and I just sit and just breathe in and breathe out and just listen to absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and she's right. Video games is my thing. I can play the same level 20 times and save it and reload and do it 20 different ways. It gives me the ability to solve problems with no risk. And that helps train me in the real world when risk is a real thing. Which direction am I going to go? Which weapon am I going to use? That kind of thing.
Okay. Here's one of my favorite things about the nine bourbon.
It's still here. How about that?
That's that's an absolute great one.
That, and also the fact that it is for everybody. It's for your OG bourbon drinkers to your new people bourbon drinkers. It is for everybody, and it smells amazing. I'm very big on smells, so it's just that aroma. You pop it open and just fragrant, and I love it.
And I'll say my real favorite thing about the nine is that we won a gold medal in the John Barleycorn Awards for it in 2021. And the John Barleycorn Awards is hosted by Fred Minnick, who is Bourbon's OG. And so when we have people say things, different about the taste and whatnot, I'm thinking in the back of my head, well, Fred Minnick liked it. So he gave us a gold medal. So, I mean, and we lost the double gold to Jim Beam Black. So that says a mouthful, so to me, to know that we've done this and we've gotten recognition for it, and not necessarily the recognition that we were looking for, but recognition on a national stage in a major competition, that's one of my favorite things, for us to be newcomers to the game, literally freshmen, you know what I'm saying, in the college world of bourbon. That for me is an absolute favorite.
James, what is one of your favorite qualities about Brittany?
Her visionary ability. Brittany has this just crazy ability to see things somewhat before they happen, but just know this is the direction. And, for someone like myself who's been in a lot of leadership roles, I'm able to get the crew of the ship to a direction, but she knows, she can see the journey before she sets the course. And that's an ability that I've never had, but I can get you there through the chaos, but she knows what the end result is going to look like before she even starts. And to me, that's a very rare quality in a leader. It's a very rare quality in a human being to see what can be, and then to be able to have the humanity to work with other people to create that vision and dream. And that's why I wanted her to lead the business, because she is just that impactful. It's crazy.
I need an all button. Oh. Brittany, what is one of your favorite qualities about James?
Ooh, there's so many. But my favorite has to be his sense of calmness. He's very calm, even when, things are crazy and just everything's just out of sync and everything. He's just so calm. And me, I am a hothead, so I goes off, I be popping off. And he just keeps like, no, babe, calm down. Let's talk this through. Don't call this person yet. Don't be sending no nasty emails or anything like that. Just think it through. And he's just very calm, and he's just very just I don't know, zen like. And I'm just like, where do you get this from? Because I need some of that, because I just pop off.
Like I said, there's really no work-life balance per se, but you have balance in each other that gives your work and your life the balance that it needs. So that's actually good. Final one. James, we'll go back to you. Here's one of my favorite things about myself.
Oh, wow. I guess I would say, man, that is a tough one. That's a real tough one. I guess my favorite thing about myself is that, in my mind, I grew up watching a lot of Star Trek. I'm the captain of the Enterprise. And so when I make decisions, I'm making decisions and even though it's just me and Brittany in the business, I'm making those decisions for a community of people. What's the best course of action? How can I have a maximum impact with minimal damage? How can I make sure everybody gets home from the mission? Just really trying to make sure I think about others, in the business. How do you execute at a high level? How do family wise, how do you make sure you're making the right decision for your family, for your girls? Just that type of thought process, which can be damaging at times when you do make a wrong decision. But on the forefront, just understanding that in leadership, there are no backward steps. There is no tent in the reserve in the back of the lines in your business where you can hide behind when the shots are fired. You're right up there up front, and for me, I try to, put my shield in front of the CEO and stand in front of her to make sure I take the blast. And I do the same thing for my teams at my job. I stand in front because typically I'm the captain of the ship. And so, being able to get that input from people when decisions need to be made and ultimately be the one that has to make the call and understanding that weight. And to Brittany's earlier point, that's why I am calm, is because I know that no matter what happens, when you're working with the right group of people, you cannot fail. And you get their input. You make sure that failure is never an option.
And what about you, Brittany? This is one of my favorite things about myself.
Favorite things about myself is that I'm that person that's always there. I'm that ride or die person. I'm the one that, my friends call me up. I don't ask no questions. I'm like, what do you need? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I have a friend call me up at 2 a.m. I'm there putting on clothes. Like, okay, I'm there. Like, what's up? So I really like that because I don't see that in a lot of people. I mean, especially now, people are so me focused. It's all about me. What can you do for me type thing, to where I just like to give. I like to make other people better, make them great, help them out, talk them through things. I have friends that go through the same problem over and over and over, and I will always pick up the phone, talk them through it, have them cry, things like that. And I like that.
So Brittany reminds me of that friend to you be somewhere and if it's about to go down, she just, let's go. Let's go. Yep. I love it. I love it.
Ooh, no questions asked. I'm like, I don't care. No questions asked. Let's go. Yes.
I love it. Guys, this has been amazing. I appreciate you trusting me with your background, your life, your journey, and sharing those moments. James, I think you said it eloquently, and I'll just reiterate it. At the end of the day, it was great to have the conversation, but also if there's any way I personally can be of value to you both, that's more important to me than any conversation we may have had on a podcast anywhere else. So I truly want to see you successful. And I say that not just as a soundbite, but in reality, it's part of my purpose that I'm finally tapping into, is like, I love to help make other people successful and to help them realize their journey. And if I could be of any a resource to that in any way, I mean this, please lean into me, and I'm there. Where can they find the brand?
Well, on the partnership tip and opportunity tip, same here, Monty. Yeah, we shine brighter when we're helping others, and it's always good to help somebody else, especially in this industry where we don't have that, as we talked about earlier, that top of mind. This is crazy, but for us, to where you can find us, we're sold a couple places here in Louisville, Westport Whiskey and Wine, Liquor City on 15th and Jefferson here in Louisville, Kentucky Derby Museum. And nice. Then from a social standpoint, our handles are at 2 Cents Inc. So 2 CENTSINC on different socials. That's where you can find us. Babe, did I miss anything?
Yeah. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, IG, and I believe that's it. And also, you can personally find me at the 2 Cents CEO, and I am on IG. So please follow me to learn more about my personal journey. And because I just be on there just talking, what it's like to do this. So candid talks, candid chats, things like that.
Brittany, you deserve an award for going through this entire interview with the baby. I don't know how you did it. You deserve an award. I might have to come up with some category of awards at the end of the year for different people. You will definitely get one. That was amazing. And she is so calm and chill, unless she sleep. She is so calm. Because I know mine would have been all over the place. Oh, the reason why it's all being done. I love it. Well, look, thank you both so much for sharing part of your day with me. And, I'll just say, I'll see you at the top.
Yes. Thanks, Monty. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Absolutely, guys.
Thank you.
Till next time.